Hey everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. We've been commenting publicly on the Minnesota Vikings for over 2 decades apiece. It's been a long time and we got more to talk about today. First, we're going to start off with, is Sam Darnold fool's gold? That's what we named the episode after. Is he the real deal? We had a viewer disagree with us, and we're going to put out some observations. Let's call them that. Then we're going to dive into a few of the position groups and how we feel about their depths and whether we're ready to go, whether we're ready not to go. You know, what might we do? We'll find out. And then we're going to end up with Vikings Vault, going way back. I mean, way back to 1963 when the Minnesota Vikings drafted Paul Flatley. And most of you are like, who? We'll tell you about one of the best wide receivers the Vikings ever had. Next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, everybody, and I want to welcome everybody that's already in the chat. I see Mr. Bob Swede. I see the Drewster is here. Rap is here joining us as well. Davey, the original, is also with us. Raymond, good to see you all. Julian, glad to have you. Daniel as well. And yes, Drew, whiskey helps. When we're talking about the Vikings, you betcha it does. And then we see Barber in here as well. That is absolutely fantastic. But let's get this started. Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
They're good. Weather's good. No fires. Fired up to talk about Vikings today.
Well, that's great. No fires. Haven't heard that in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's true.
That's absolutely awesome. Yep, and Scolded Nick as well. We're going to start off, as usual, with Theme 1. And we could not hold this one back. Is Sam actually good?
A very good question. A very important question for the Vikings in 2024, Dave, for sure. Two or three shows ago, Dave, we kind of got into, one of our segments was like, what's it going to take for Darnold? What's the biggest roadblock for Darnold to overcome to be a successful quarterback in 2024, being as it looks like, at least right now, he's going to be the guy under center when we kick things off on September 8th or whenever it is against the Giants in New York. I said that I thought my view was that it was really the mental stuff that was going to be the biggest thing for Game 7 is tomorrow, Drew, if you're talking Stanley Cup Finals. Monday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. But we digress.
Always ask the Canadian, he knows.
Not all the time, but anyhow, back to Sam Darnold. And I felt that, if you looked at his career, he hasn't had a lot of sustained success. And my feeling was that when he has a bad game or a couple of bad games or a bad half or a bad quarter, or he makes a bad throw, like what positive stuff is he going to draw on to bounce back from that and right the ship and right his play and get himself and the Vikings offense back on track? And I just felt he hadn't stacked up a good enough number of games in a seasons that he doesn't have that positive stuff in the back of his mind to say, I can do it when things aren't going right. And so that was my take. But we had a a commenter online when this got posted on YouTube who disagreed strongly with my take on this. And it was at John P.O. 6IN, and you got it up there, and he goes, "You guys are wrong. Darnold has stacked good seasons. In 2019, he went 6-2 in the last half of the year and was second in quarterback rating. In 2022, he went 4-2, and the Panthers, during that surge, almost made the playoffs. During that stint, he was second in the league in yards per attempt. You are seriously misinformed about Darnold." There you go. Not agreeing. Very good, and we welcome those opinions. But are we seriously misinformed, Dave, on this show? Well, I figured let's take a look at these quote unquote good, strong stretches of play that Sam Darnold has had in that whole time frame, and see if it's really as good as John was positing up there. I think the first thing is those stretches. John talks about how he played well, seasons he's played well. Well, I don't know how you look at it, Dave, but my interpretation of it is that 6-2 and 4-2 are not full seasons. They're portions of seasons, but they're not full seasons. A full season is a 16 back in 2019, 2020, 2021. Those were 16 game seasons. Now it's 17 games. So that's a full season. So got an issue there. But even beyond that, I think that when you look at in that stretch, the best year that Sam Darnold ever had was 2019. That was part of the season, the 6-2 that what John had referenced. He played 13 games that year. Again, this is the best he's statistically ever done. He threw for 3,024 yards, 19 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. He had a completion percentage of 61.9. Now, in today's NFL, those numbers aren't that impressive. He did only start 13 games, Dave, so if he had played a full 16, those numbers would have increased for sure. But even looking at those raw numbers, in 2019, Sam Darnold, in the best statistical season he has ever had, he was 25th in passing yards in the league, 25th in completion percentage, 24th in touchdown passes thrown. So not that great. Way in the bottom 10 in the league. The only stat of those four where he was in the top 10 is a stat where you don't want to be in the top 10. Interceptions. His 13 were 10th most in the league. So, and remember that this is Darnold's best statistical season in the NFL so far. Again, not great, I don't think. But I think it's also worth mentioning in that hot 6-2 stretch that he had, the opponents that he faced. The opponents were combined 53-75 in that 6-2 stretch. That's who the Jets played in those 8 games. They only beat one team with a winning record. That was Buffalo. And in that game, the Jets scored 13 points. And Darnold threw for 199 yards, 1 touchdown pass, and 1 interception. The thing is that the Bills only scored 6 points in that game, Dave, because Matt Barkley played almost the entire game and did predictably Matt Barkley things. So I think it's pretty hard to make an argument that Darnold won that game for the Jets with his play. It was more the Jets' defense and Matt Barkley's doing that resulted in that. And I think that in that 6-2 stretch, beyond Buffalo, the Jets and Darnold beat some pretty weak teams. They beat the 4-12 Giants. They beat the 3-13 Washington Redskins at the time. They beat the 5-11 Miami Dolphins the first year with Brian Flores as head coach. They beat the 7-9 Oakland Raiders. They also lost to the 2-14 Bengals. Now, Darnold did play well in many of those wins, but it was against lousy competition. And I think you have to consider that when you're looking at the Jets' record and Darnold's play and that context. So that's that 6-2 stretch. Now let's look at the 4-2 stretch in 2022 with Carolina that John mentions. Once again, not that exactly a murderer's row of teams that he faced there. 3 of them had winning records, but barely. Those 3 winning teams all had 9-8 records. And combined, those 6 teams that the Panthers played in that stretch were 47-55. And John, the commenter, mentions that Darnold was second in the league in yards per attempt during those 6 games. I did not verify that, so I'll take his word for it. But again, looking at the game logs of that stretch, Darnold's play is pretty underwhelming in 4 of those 6 games. He threw for just 19 passes, 164 yards and 1 touchdown pass in a 23-10 win over Denver in that 4-2 stretch. He threw for just 24 passes for 120 yards and 1 TD pass in a 30-24 win over Seattle. He threw just 23 passes for 225 yards and 1 TD pass in a 24-16 loss to the Steelers. And then he also threw just 15 passes and completed 5 for 43 yards in a 10-7 win over the Saints. So I think our viewers are getting what I'm laying down here, Dave, is that if you look a little bit deeper at Darnold's 2 good stretches as an NFL quarterback that John points out, they don't look so good. And even if he had played great in those 2 stretches, and he didn't, I don't think, there's still been plenty of times where he, overall in his career, where he has not played very well. His teams are 21-35 in the 56 games he started. He's got a career completion percentage just under 60%. He's thrown almost as many interceptions as touchdown passes. So the evidence after 6 NFL seasons is that, Darnold isn't very good. Now, we've said it before, we've said it again. That doesn't mean he was in lousy situations in New York and in Carolina. This is the best situation he's ever been in. He's got Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson to throw to. Anybody that makes anybody better. Jordan Addison to throw to. TJ Hawkinson eventually. He's got Aaron Jones to hand off to. Ty Chandler to hand off to. He's got Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill to protect him. So he's got gentle Kevin O'Connell as his head coach, and Josh McCown as his quarterback coach, and we think that's going to work out pretty well, just because the wealth of experience that Josh McCown has as an NFL quarterback who's been in similar situations as Sam Darnold has been, as far as being, and placed in tough situations in his career. So Darnold has talent. With this situation, sure, he could be this year's Baker Mayfield, like when Mayfield went to Tampa Bay last year, and he got to throw to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and all of a sudden, he looks 10 times the better quarterback. But until we see it from Darnold, it's hard to believe it, right? And I think that if you're skeptical out there about Sam Darnold being able to play well in 2024 as a quarterback when he hasn't been able to do it his entire NFL career, you are right to be skeptical. You are not seriously misinformed. You are actually completely informed. And so that is my view on it. I think a lot of people probably agree with that. And I think that, but hey, happy to hear other people's opinions and yours, Dave, on that one.
Well, it's very, very interesting when you look at it and dissect it, like the way you did, where you went back to those stretches. And I want to thank the poster, John Posixon, on his comment. It drove us to go back and look at those, and that's always appreciative. Now, we're getting chat here for us now. Some people are agreeing that, hey, there's reason we might be concerned. And there's the others that say, hey, he was never surrounded by who surrounds him now. And it's that love and nurture thing versus being isolated. And that's true. The Jets were a lousy situation. The Panthers were a lousy situation. The Niners were a very, very good situation, and he couldn't beat out Brock Purdy. But you wonder if the coddling of Kevin O'Connell, the coaching, the wide receivers, everything else will help. Now, people bring up, Sarah originally brought up, that didn't help Dobbs. Dobbs had the same thing. True, that did not help Dobbs, but Dobbs was not a first-round pick. I think Darnold has more talent than Dobbs ever did. Now, whether his brain is, I think Dobbs got the better brain overall. Obviously, when it comes to football, though, that's the issue. When it comes to football, we hear, or I've heard numerous times listening to numerous shows across the NFL, not just in the Viking sphere, but across the NFL, that Aaron Donald always looks great during the summer and the preseason when there's no pressure on. And that when the games start is when the NFL speed, the full-blown hitting, all that stuff starts to play, and that's where he starts to struggle. Well, I've said before, I thought that of Kirk Cousins up until KOC got his hands on him. Whether he can turn that around into being a successful quarterback, I hope he does. For his sake, I hope he does. Now, but we all know we drafted J.J. McCarthy to be the Vikings quarterback of the future. Now, the question is, when does the future start? And we've always, wondered about that. And KOC says when he fills all those checklists of what he wants him to do. Now, how soon that happens, we don't know. And we've all dissected it, looked at different points in the schedule where it may happen, looked at what happens if he beats him out in the preseason and starts game one, or what happens if Darnold plays well and balls out through the entire season. We've gone to both those extremes. So we've covered all the bases. This is the opposite, looking at it from on the opposite side, whether we're going to do this. Now, what's brought up, I think Darnold will start the season. How long he plays, because we have JJ there, is going to be affected by how well he plays. Can all those good things we talked about make Sam Darnold into a good quarterback? Or what we just talked about in his 5 seasons in the NFL, are they going to materialize? And then what happens when suddenly there's pressure poured on by the Wilfs? Now, I think the Wilfs are lock, stock, in step with whatever the plan is to bring on JJ. But you have the Wilfs. Are they going to feel the pressure? You have Kwesi. Is he going to feel the pressure? You have Kevin O'Connell himself. Is he going to feel the pressure? If we start out 1-4, people are going to be screaming. The fans are. Start JJ. Let him take his lumps and we'll see.
It'll be earlier than that.
Yeah.
1 and 2.
We're going to find out. We just don't know. But it has happened before. We've seen it. We saw it in 2011. Donovan McNabb came in here, and he was the starter, unquestionably the starter, the veteran that had been all the way to the Super Bowl, right? And what did Donovan do? He starts throwing worm burners, right? Skipping them off the turf to his wide receivers. He was obviously washed, and washed badly. So what happened then? There was clear pressure from the Wilfs and from Rick Spielman and from Coach Leslie Frazier, by Leslie Frazier, and the fans that we needed to change him out. Put in our rookie quarterback. And, of course, that rookie quarterback was Christian Ponder. Mm-hmm. All right? And they put in that rookie, Christian Ponder, and it ruined him. And it ruined whatever slim chance he ever had of being a decent, competent quarterback in the NFL. That, I think, that alone is what KOC and crew are warning against, or not warning against, or hedging against, and why we may see Sam Darnold start and continue to go. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all works out. Can Sam Darnold make a step in his career? I advocate that Kirk Cousins did under KOC. If Sam does, Sam will be in there a while. If not, like we've said, a quarterback that throws for just under 60% completions in this league in this day and time, we're not talking about the 60s and the 70s where 60% is outstanding. We're talking about the 2020s where 60% is not that good. Can he up his game? Is there enough around him? Is the system that KOC employs enough to make him a competent NFL quarterback at this level, a starter? We will find out. And Sarah, I agree with you 100%. JJ's mentality, I think, at least what's demonstrated, what I've seen, is stronger than Christian Ponder's. And that's all part of it. It's the mental game. And where Sam Darnold has failed in the past is mentally. He's got talent. He's physically talented. But can he hold it up under pressure? And he has not demonstrated that to date. And I think that's your whole point.
It is, and he has not demonstrated that to date. So how can you believe that he will? There's been lots of great comments below. Like Drew has got a great point about how this is Darnold's last chance to prove he's a starting quarterback in the NFL before he becomes journeyman backup guy for the rest of his career, which ain't a bad gig, by the way. But,
no, you make $10 million to hold a clipboard. Hey, that's rough.
But any competitor wants to be out there, and I believe that Sam Darnold's no different than that. But so Drew's saying like Darnold's going to be like, I don't care. I don't give an F. This is my chance. I got to take chances. I got to let it all hang out. And I think that would be great to see. But when a game gets tight, and you know that a mistake by you could cost you the game, are you going to play that free and easy, or are you going to play safe? I think a lot of times, particularly a guy with Sam Darnold's track record, he's going to play safe. He's going to do the check down. He's going to do the I don't want to be the guy who screws it up kind of thing. So that's an interesting thing to point out. I love to see Sam Darnold play free and easy. I think that's what we want to see a lot of NFL players do, play with the quiet mind and all that stuff. Sometimes people like Nick Mullins play a little bit too free and easy. But that's a great point. Sarah was talking about like if the Vikings go 2-5 or whatever at the beginning, that you might as well put JJ McCarthy in there. I think like you, Dave, I hope that does not happen. I hope that Kevin O'Connell and the Wilfs and everybody are in this for like, sure, if McCarthy is ready at that point in time, yes, make a change. But if he's not ready, don't throw him in there, like Drew said, to the Wolves. I think that's the bad thing. Just to see what he has, you could do some irreparable damage there to him, even though McCarthy seems like a stronger mentally than a lot of the guys coming out there. But I think stick with him. And on Purple Insider, I was watching yesterday, Kevin Seifert was talking about how he thinks the reason Nick Mullins is still around right now is that the Vikings may be looking at if Darnold struggles, that Nick Mullins goes in there if McCarthy isn't ready. They don't just put McCarthy in there. Now, fans are going to go apeshit if that happens, but if McCarthy's not ready and Darnold is sucking, I think there's worse things you could do than to put Nick Mullins in there, and he's going to get the offense moving. Maybe it's a 3 touchdowns and 2 interception game every time or vice versa, but the offense will move with Nick Mullins at quarterback if he's got the weapons. He has shown that. It's just that it's a roller coaster ride as far as like, crazy play.
For the faint of heart. There should be a warning. Right. This game will cause you momentary heart palpitations. We're watching Nick Mullins is starting, but it will be exciting. Yes, and I agree with you. That should be the plan. When JJ is ready, put JJ in. Until then, hope Darnold takes that next step in his career, and KOC could be the quarterback whisperer we all hope he is, and has somewhat demonstrated between Cousins and a little bit with Dobbs and obviously Nick Mullins being able to throw 400 yards a game, etc. It's let's see that play out. But
now
all
you got
the
a
while,
they're
getting JJ.
If you
ready.
got a last season, then it's the last game of the year, the last 2 games of the year, and Darnold shown he just couldn't get it done. The Vikings go like 2-1-5 with Nick Mullins in there, and then you got your last 2, and maybe then you put McCarthy in, even if he's not ready, because you just want him to see a little bit. But even that's risky. I mean, how much damage happened? How much damage did Jaron Hall sustain in the half that he played against Green Bay at the end of last year? did that do him any good professionally? I don't know, but it certainly wasn't a great way for him to end the year, the way that happened. And I'd hate to see McCarthy go in there and really stink it up in the one game that he plays when the Vikings put him in because they know he's not ready, but they put him in there anyway because they was, like Sarah says, let's see what he's got. And what they find out is that he doesn't have very much at this point in time. And he goes in the offseason with 11 for 30, sacked 8 times, threw 3 interceptions. That's how you go into the offseason. Not the greatest way to go. But, hindsight is Paul ain't making the right. Sarah said, we shall see. I would say the odds are probably great that he doesn't. But if he does make the roster, I think that's good news because that shows that Jaron Hall has really developed in the 12 months since, 8 or 9 months since we last saw him play.
And like I said, I think he's going to get cut, but they're going to try to put him on the practice squad. I think is how that's going to work out. But we'll find out. It's going to be fun. Well, that was the first theme of today, and it's the one we named the show after. That fact that is he fool's gold or not? We'll find out. Is basically the way it is. But we thank the viewer for putting in that comment that drove us to do that. Now, on to theme 2. Positional units. That sounds like a metric thing.
Not the way I look at it, but free agency is over, Dave. The NFL draft is over. The Vikings 90-person roster right now is pretty much set, although there'll be a few comings and goings between now and training camp. But bottom churn. We saw a bit of that this week. But I thought that this was a good time to look at our positional units. Before free agency, or mostly before free agency, we looked at those and assessed like how they looked, what the Vikings might do in free agency to beef up some of those units, or if they will do anything, how might they attack those units with the draft. That's all come and gone. But so I feel now is a good time just before
we get a handful. We're not going over every single.
Not going overall, but just to look at. Just before we get into training camp in about a month's time, wanted to look at what positional units am I feeling good about and what positional units am I not feeling good about right as we stand right now. And again, please chime in with what positional units you don't think that you feel good about down there. So we're going to have at her. First off, we'll start with the ones that I do feel good about right now. Safeties. I think this is a very strong unit. I've said it all along. We've got 4 that I feel really good about right now. Harrison Smith, legend. Yeah, he's 35 years old, and not what he was when he was 25. Few people are. Certainly very few pro athletes are, but he can still be effective in there and in this Flores defense. Cam Bynum, just coming off his best last year, his best season as a pro. I think that he's a player that even if he doesn't ascend and get any better than he is, he's still pretty damn good right now, and a really smart, heady player who is not going to be a liability on the field just because of his football IQ and his smarts. Josh Metellus, we know how I feel about him if you've watched this show before. Just a do-it-all guy we saw last year. Whatever Brian Flores asked him to do, he did it, and he usually did it well. Blitz, played defensive line, edge, safety, nickel, linebacker. Like Metellus had so much on his plate last year, and he really did a great job in it. Another young player who is in his prime right now, and I feel really good about. And Theo Jackson, again, didn't get a ton of playing time, but I liked what I saw from him. And he made that play in the Philly game. Nice interception there. If he had to go in and one of those 3 was injured, I would not be worried one bit. I think that he's a real good, solid player. And so there's 4 safeties right there, even though we usually play 3, or we did last year, I feel really good about. And then even the 5th guy, a 5th safety on our depth chart, Jay Ward, Alec Lewis from the Athletics said that these are OTAs and so take it with somewhat of a grain of salt. But he said that he looked like one of the most explosive defensive players during the offseason so far. And we know that Jay Ward was a guy that the Vikings thought highly of last year, a guy who's played corner at college, got switched to safety, multifaceted, multi-positional. Is he a player who is going to take a leap in year two? I feel good about his future. And so that's 5 guys I feel really good about, which really makes up for the fact that, even with Lewis Cine and his bustness so far, when you've got 5 guys ahead of him who you feel good about, that kind of makes up for it a little bit. The fact that Lewis Cine has been absolutely horrible in the 2 years that he has been a Minnesota Viking, and likely will not be on this roster when they break camp or when the preseason is over in August or in September. He'll be he'll be somewhere else, and it probably won't be Minnesota, barring a massive training camp and preseason where he just shows that he's everything that they thought he was when they picked him 32 overall, but I'm not expecting it. So safeties, feel really good about it.
I don't doubt that. I just want folks to know Najee Thompson has moved into the safety group, so he's going to be practicing at safety. He is a special teams ace. That's Najee Thompson's job. He lives and breathes special teams. But how I have these players listed as we go through this is how I feel they sit on the depth chart, and I place Najee Thompson above Lewis Cine. I think this will be the last time we see Lewis Cine in purple will be this preseason, but we'll find out.
So, yeah, safeties feel good about. Drew, not offside on field goal attempts. I think he's got that one down pat, but we'll see. Quarterback, actually, I feel good about. I know that we just discussed quarterback. I know that there are questions about how well our top guys will do, particularly Darnold and JJ McCarthy. But I feel that this is the 4 that we have in this room right now are 4 guys that are going to push each other. You got the reclamation project in Sam Darnold. His last chance to show he's a starting quarterback. He's going to be motivated, and he's going to be, if he can't make it here with this situation, he can't make it anywhere. JJ McCarthy, hopefully our franchise quarterback of the future, just waiting for the right time to get in when he's ready. And Nick Mullins, again, roller coaster ride guy. You never, a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get when he drops back to throw. But again, he's shown he's an exciting guy back there. He can sling it. He can move an offense. It's just he throws it to the opposing team a little bit too much. But hey, we know if he gets in there, he can get the job done. And then Jaren Hall, there were a lot of people who felt very pretty high on him coming into when he was in the draft in 2023, including our own Tyler Forness. So he's a guy that always was a developmental project. He's in the second year of his development. We'll see where that goes. What I like about this quarterback room, Dave, and is why I think we got 4 guys, again, that they're going to push each other. There is no washed up veteran who's taking snaps from amongst this bunch or no hopers. I think that these are all guys that, there's no Donovan McNabb, like you said, from 2010. There's no Kelly Holcomb from 2007 in there that's washed up. These are guys that are either they hold some promise in some shape or form, and or they've shown that they can get the job done at the NFL level and play at a reasonable level. I think Nick Mullins is that example. So I feel good about the depth and the way the quarterback room looks there, even though we don't have a high end like elite starter yet there, but there's some intriguing options
yet.
I also feel good about the tight end position. Yeah, we don't have TJ Hawkinson right now, but when he gets back, I think this is a very strong room, depending on how it's made up. The Robert Tonyan signing, that makes me feel good about the depth of the tight end room right now, because now we've got somebody who has caught over 50 passes twice in an NFL season, that he's a Viking right now. I feel that could be an important signing. Josh Oliver, he's going to do what Josh Oliver does. He's going to block like crazy, and he is going to catch the odd pass, maybe a few more this year. Johnny Munt, we know people who watch the show knows I don't love Johnny Munt, but he is a guy who is dependable. You know what you're going to get out of him. If you have to play him a little bit, you can get by. So not a bad fourth tight end there. Nick Muse, I think, is a guy I thought really progressed in year two, even though he didn't get a lot of opportunities. But what I saw in preseason, a little bit of what I saw when he played at the end of the year in 2023, I think that I'm looking forward to more development from him in year three. And then the N'Keal Harry situation, we talked about it last week, but I think this is a great gamble for the Vikings and a great gamble by Harry to see if this works. Taking a wide receiver by trade and turning him into a tight end because he's got more of a tight end frame. I don't think it's going to really amount to anything or work out, but again, it's a great gamble for both the coaching staff and Harry to take. And I hope it does work out. So I feel there's a lot of good options there, between solid to serviceable options behind TJ Hawkinson when he comes back. I like the depth at tight end right now. Where do I not? Where are my worries as far as positional units go? I think first off is wide receiver. Sure, you got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. That's a hell of a 1-2 punch. Nobody's going to disagree with that. I do think that but after that, what do we got? Brandon Powell, Jalen Naylor, Trent Sherfield, or any of those guys any good? It's a big mystery to me. And if Addison or, God forbid, Justin Jefferson gets hurt for any length of time, that is going to be an issue for the Vikings offense and whoever is the quarterback, that you've only got either Addison or Justin Jefferson to throw to as opposed to both of them, because I don't think Brandon Powell or Jalen Naylor or Trent Sherfield can really step in there and provide you anywhere near close to the production those guys can. So that worries me beyond the two studs that we have. Defensive line does worry me. I know in a 3-4 that this is not like the sexy position. It's not the position that gets a lot of
how can big round bellies not be sexy?
Oh yeah, you love them, Dave. But as far as those are the guys that don't get the big sack stats in the 3-4, a lot of times not the big tackle stats, but you still need quality there. You need guys that can hold their gaps, can occupy blockers, can help with the run, can put a little pressure on the quarterback from time to time. And outside of Harrison Phillips, I don't see a whole lot of that ability there after him. Jerry Tillery, what's he got? I don't know. Jonah Williams, what's his strength? I do not know. Jonathan Bullard is a strong run defender, but cannot rush the passer to save his soul. What is James Lint? What's James Lint's superpower? What's Jalen Roy's superpower? There's just a lot of I don't know. We got lots of bodies there, but are any of them even solid? I would say right now my answer would be no. Hopefully one or two emerges, but it is an area where that worries me, that we're going to get the kind of play that we need out of that. Because if your defensive line isn't holding the line in this defense, if they're not plugging gaps, occupying blockers well, stopping the run, then that's really going to limit our ability to rush the passer. How that's going to limit the effectiveness, I think, of Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, and those guys that really turn it up, because offenses are going to be in 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 1 too often. So that worries me. And finally, the other position that really worries me right now is cornerback. We've brought in a lot of extra bodies here. The Shaq Griffin signing, he's had rave reviews so far in OTAs and the minicamp, but he's on his 4th team in 3 seasons. There's a reason for that. Byron Murphy did not play well last year. The thinking is that if Griffin takes one of the outside positions, he'll get to move into nickel, which is where he's supposed to be his best position, and he'll play better there. We'll see about that. Mekhi Blackmon, I like him a lot, but if he's going to be our top corner, that is, I think, a problem for the secondary. Caleb Evans, is he going to be more consistent and more aggressive as a cornerback? Is he going to get it? I think that's a big question mark, and my answer to that would be I don't think so. And then after that, hey, who knows? Andrew Booth Jr., again, probably not making the roster. Who else is going to emerge? Can Kyrie Jackson get his 6'4" frame on there and his long arms and be a contributor and be a positive factor in the secondary at corner as a rookie? Another big question. So we got lots of bodies there, but I don't know outside of I don't know from any of them who is going to play well. Right now, if you ask me who our best cornerback is, I would say Mekhi Blackman, but I have a bit of a man crush on Mekhi, so take that with a grain of salt. But that does worry me. And the various other positions we haven't got at, I think that those are kind of in the whether it be offensive line or whatever. I think we're okay there, but overall, I think roster-wise, I don't think the depth the Vikings have is quite where it needs to be. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been working on this the past 2 years, but it's going to take time, and I think it still isn't where he wants it to be and where fans want it to be either. And he said that at the end of the last season, that he said, this team, I didn't do a good enough job of getting players at the bottom of the roster who could come in and be the next man up and play well, and I've got to do that moving forward, and he's still working on it.
Yeah, and hopefully some of these young guys turn out to be, the next big thing. But as of right now, we've got a whole bunch of meh or mediocre guys. Now, I think Byron Murphy will do well as corner because that's tough, as nickel because that's a tough position to play. But we find the shutdown guys on the outsides. But as long as we got 3 good corners out there, they don't have to be great. They don't have to be islands. I think we'll do okay on that defense. I think B-Flow is going to, throw the kitchen sink at the offense, and it'll just concern them. And Delton, yes, McLaughlin is one I want to see this preseason. How is he playing? And Kyrie Jackson. Those 2 of the youngsters that I really want to look at and see. And I hope they do great.
Yes, McLaughlin, I didn't mention him but we have mentioned him in the past, and he is going to be a guy that's going to be somebody we got to watch out for, and hopefully he gets lots of snaps in preseason. We don't know how all is going to shake out. We do know that Murphy and Griffin and potentially Mekhi Blackman won't be playing much, if at all.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see. That brings us to theme 3. Welcome to the Vikings Vault.
And we went, this segment where we look at Viking seasons or players or transactions from the past that were notable. Some of them turned out well, some of them maybe have not. But look at the rich history of the Vikings and try to bring up, get some discussion going on that and add a little bit of spice to our lives here. Always good to know your history. Mm-hmm. And this week we are going deep. We went deep into the vault, Dave, really deep. Went back into the beginning of the franchise, the early 1960s, to do our Vikings vault and looking at the Vikings' first deep threat wide receiver the Vikings ever had.
And we've had some good ones.
We have had. And I think if you're a Vikings fan, you're probably, especially a long-time one, like some of the ones on here, whether it's Raymond or Davy Chains or Drew. Don't know about some of the others, but maybe you've been a long time. But it is a rich history. The Vikings have had a pretty strong history of wide receivers who are outstanding. It's starting with Sammy White, Ahmad Rashad, AC Anthony Carter, Jake, Chris Carter, CC, Jake Reed, the greatest of them all, Randy Moss, Stephon Diggs, and now the guy who could become the greatest. Yeah, that's right, Adam Thielen, and the guy who could end up being the greatest of them all, Justin Jefferson, gritty. So it's been a very, very stacked wide receiver group of wide receivers we've had in the Vikings history. But before any of those guys showed up, the Vikings' first great. I would say wide receiver was a guy that the greatest wide receiver you don't know anything about, Paul Flatley. Who was Paul Flatley? Well, first off, just want to talk about how the passing game back in those days, in the early 60s, the passing game was not a big part of NFL offenses like it is today, not even close. Teams moved the ball by running the ball back then in the early 60s. And if that didn't work, often you didn't move the ball at all. You just punted. But in 1963, the Vikings decided to do something to change that. And they selected Paul Flatley out of Northwestern University in the 4th round of the NFL draft. And in 62, Flatley had led Northwestern in receiving yards before he was drafted by the Vikings. And if the Vikings were looking for Flatley to add some juice to their passing game, it ended up working. As a rookie, and keep in mind, these are stats from the early 60s. Passing game is vastly different than it is today. Like you said, quarterbacks who or like a completion percentage of sub 50% was not uncommon in the NFL.
A very good one. Like we take Fran Tarkenton. He was
Joe
right
Namath
around 60%.
If you look at some of Joe Namath's stats, they are like abominable. And he made by today's standard, and he made the Hall of Fame. Check it out sometime. It's shocking. But anyway, but Flatley, as a rookie, Flatley in his rookie year, he catches 51 passes for 867 yards and 4 TDs. He averaged 17 yards per catch. And that production got him named NFL NFC Rookie of the Year. And that 17 yards per catch average is a noteworthy stat, Dave, because if you're in 2024, that average would have been good for 5th in the league, making Flatley one of the NFL's most dangerous deep threats. And a high yards per catch average was something Flatley consistently did as a Viking, but he was only a Viking for 5 seasons. In 1964, he averaged 16.1 yards per catch. In 65, he averaged 17.9 yards per catch, and that was the second best mark of his 8-year career. His best was 18.5 in 1969 with the Falcons. Vikings could have used him in 69, I think.
Yes.
When they went to the Super Bowl. In 1965, he averaged 15.5 yards per catch. The only season, and it was his final season with the Vikings in 67, where his yards per catch was well below that, was in 67. He had just 10.1 yards per catch in that game. That year. Don't know what happened there. But, Flatley led the Vikings in catches 3 times in those 5 seasons. He also led the team in receiving yards 3 times. And if you're looking at Flatley's production as a Viking in the 5 years with Minnesota, and again, viewing it through the 2024 lens, it doesn't seem that impressive because, for example, his career high of 51 catches as a rookie, while it was good for 11th in the NFL in 1963, 60 years later, it would have tied him for 76th in the NFL. However, Again, it's the yards per catch average that really stands out to me through his Vikings and his NFL career.
And you also got to think he played a 14-game season. Right?
Yes,
playing 17.
Yeah, that's right. And in a couple of those years, his second year, he only played 10 games, so he missed 4 of those games. But yards per catch averages were, if you look at it, they're quite a bit higher back in the 60s and 70s in Flatley's day than they are now. And nowadays, of course, getting the ball out quickly and throwing short and depending on blocking and yards after the catch, that's the norm in the modern passing game. But back then, it seemed like, guys actually did throw the long bombs they got to their wide receivers. They weren't doing any wide receiver screens. But still, Flatley's yards per catch average as a Viking put him in the top 15 in the NFL almost every year while he was a Viking. And his yards per catch average as a Viking was at 16 yards per catch. And remember all those receivers I mentioned earlier, Dave, all great ones. Well, only Sammy White and Moss had a higher career yards per catch average over their career at 16.3 and 16.2 respectively than Flatley did as a Viking. So his yards per catch average were higher than CC's, Anthony Carter's, Ahmad Rashad's, Stephon Diggs, even Justin Jefferson's right now. So pretty impressive. And again, he's a guy that's a bit forgotten. some people on here might actually remember him more as being part of the radio broadcasting team that covered the Golden Gophers football. And he did that from 71 to 1990, but he's still alive. He's 83 today. But I thought it was kind of neat to mention that. And again, about the best wide receiver the Vikings had that you never heard of.
Yeah. And I think it's a fantastic segment. I was listening this week, and it was I want to say it was from PFF that was doing on one of their podcasts on how back in that day, 60s and 70s, wide receivers were getting more yards per catch on average, and how football has changed, and how there are receivers now not even coming close to some of the numbers that these guys put up. But just the fact that they put them up, and they also compared to, hey, you had most quarterbacks didn't throw 60%. And as Drew said, they only threw like 12 times a game. So it was sparse. To put up the numbers that Flatley did was truly amazing back in that day and age. And that is just, it's fun to bring. He was one, I'm old. I was born in 63, and I don't remember him per se. I remember a bunch of the other great ones. And Drew is right. We forgot Gene Washington. Gene Washington deserves a place up there too. The Vikings have been great at drafting wide receivers and developing wide receivers. As Sarah said, we only wish we could draft and develop quarterbacks like that. But we just did. Sarah, we're going to keep our fingers crossed. We just did for the first time since Fran Tarkenton. So let's see. It's going to be fun. But hey, I want to thank you for bringing me this bit of Vikings history to add to our knowledge, to enrich our Vikings fandom. It's absolutely fabulous that we can bring this every once in a while to everybody out here, and I enjoy it, and I hope everybody else does as well. Thank you, Darren.
Or number 85 as well, before Sammy White.
Yep. Well, folks, I want to thank everybody that's been here today, and the chat's been just screaming. I love it. It's hard to keep up. I've been trying. You guys have been wonderful. But that makes it a show for today. Went a little bit quicker than I thought. Remember, if you have people that get into quarterback discussion and Sam Darnold, go ahead and share the show. We don't mind. Share it to everybody you know. Share it to your enemies. It'll be cool. And podcast will be out in the morning, and tomorrow we'll have the real Forno show. I haven't talked to Tyler, so I have no idea what we're going to talk about tomorrow, but we'll find out. Darren, any last words?
Yeah, we didn't get into that huge signing of Jalen Redmond, but maybe next week. The defensive lineman. Actually, I'm intrigued to kind of see him because he had, for an interior guy, he had some nice sack numbers there in the UFL. So we'll see what he does in training camp. Maybe he'll be kind of a Ty McGill kind of a situation who really flashes, and the Vikings cut him, and he ends up playing for another team who goes to the Super Bowl. Ty gets cut by us, ends up playing on the 49ers with the best defense in the league. Yeah, gets a ring. Yeah, or doesn't. Well, he didn't get a ring, but he played the Super Bowl, so yeah, got close. Yeah, a lot closer than the Vikings got.
Well, that's it. What do we say, Darren?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks for watching.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!